Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're 6 years old. Just 6. You still play with toys. You still have nightmares. You still need your mother to tuck you in at night. Now imagine this. One day, soldiers burst into your room. They dress you in heavy robes you can barely carry. They put a crown on your head that's too big for you. They drag you down marble corridors while you're crying, asking for your mother. And then they sit you on a throne, a massive, golden throne, so high that your feet, your tiny 6-year-old feet, can't even touch the ground. They just dangle there, in the air. Hundreds of men surround you, powerful men, dangerous men. They all bow, they all call you Sultan. Your Majesty, Commander of the Faithful. And you don't understand any of it. You're just a scared little boy who wants to go home. This isn't a story. This actually happened. August 8th, 1648. Topkapi Palace, Istanbul. A 6-year-old child named Mehmed was placed on the throne of the Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen. And he stayed there for 39 years, nearly 4 decades as Sultan, one of the longest reigns in Ottoman history. But here's the truth they don't tell you in the history books. He never ruled. Not really. Not once. He was a puppet, a child playing dress-up in an emperor's clothes, while others pulled the strings, while his mother murdered rivals, while grand viziers made the real decisions. And when Mehmed finally grew up, he didn't want to rule anymore. He just wanted to escape, to the forests, to hunt, to pretend he was anyone else but the Sultan. They called him Mehmed the Hunter. Not as a compliment. This is his story, the boy who was given an empire and never learned what to do with it. Let's rewind a bit, because Mehmed didn't become Sultan through skill or ambition. He became Sultan because his family destroyed itself. His father was Sultan Ibrahim. You might know him as Ibrahim the Mad. Yeah, that Ibrahim. The one who was so insane that his own army deposed him and locked him in a cage before executing him. Mehmed was only 6 years old when soldiers dragged his father away. Can you imagine watching your father, the Sultan, the most powerful man in the world, being overthrown and killed? That trauma shaped everything that came after. When Ibrahim was deposed in August 1648, the empire had a problem. They needed a new sultan, fast. Ibrahim had sons, but they were all children. The eldest? Mehmed, age 6. The palace officials looked at this terrified little boy and thought, perfect, we can control him. And they were right. But Mehmed wasn't alone. He had his mother, Turhan Sultan. She was young, only in her mid-20s, but she was smart, ambitious, ruthless when she needed to be. And she had a problem, Kosem Sultan. Now, if you know Ottoman history, you know that name. Kosem Sultan was a legend. She'd been the power behind the throne for decades. She'd raised sultans. She'd ruled the empire through her sons and grandsons. And she had no intention of letting some young upstart like Turhan take control. So for the first few years of Mehmed's reign, there was a silent war happening in the palace. 2 women, both fighting for control of the boy sultan, both willing to do anything to win. Turhan controlled access to Mehmed. He was her son after all. But Kosem controlled the Janissaries, the elite military force. And she had decades of experience manipulating palace politics. It should have been no contest. Kosem should have won easily, But Turhan had one advantage. She was willing to go further. September 2nd, 1651. Late at night, in the old palace where Kosum lived, a group of men burst into her chambers. Kosum Sultan, the woman who had ruled the Ottoman Empire for half a century, who had survived palace coups and political assassinations, who was considered untouchable, tried to run. She hid. She fought. She screamed. It didn't matter. They strangled her with a curtain cord, right there in her own room, at around 80 years old. And who ordered it? Turhan Sultan, Mehmed's mother. She'd decided that Kosum was too dangerous, that as long as Kosum lived, Turhan would never truly have power. So she made a choice. Kill the most powerful woman in the empire. Eliminate the threat. Did Mehmed know? He was only 9 years old at the time. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. Maybe he understood what his mother had done. Maybe he was too young to comprehend it. Either way, the message was clear. Turhan Sultan was in charge now, and anyone who threatened her control, even legends like Kosem, would be destroyed. So Turhan ran the empire, at least for a while. But here's the problem with putting a child on the throne. Eventually, that child becomes an adult. And adults are supposed to rule. Except Mehmed never really learned how. He'd spent his childhood watching other people make decisions. His mother, the grand viziers, the palace officials, everyone telling him what to do, where to go, what to say. And when he finally reached adulthood, when he was old enough to actually rule, he didn't want to. Mehmed discovered something much more enjoyable than governance: hunting. Not just casual hunting, obsessive hunting. He would disappear into the forests around Edirne for weeks, sometimes months at a time, chasing deer, shooting birds, living in tents, ignoring state business completely. Historical records describe Mehmed spending entire seasons in the wilderness, while wars were being fought, while the economy collapsed, while the empire needed leadership. And Mehmed? He was tracking a stag somewhere in Thrace. They started calling him Avcı Mehmed. Mehmed the hunter. Not as a compliment. But empires don't run themselves, so while Mehmed was hunting, someone else had to govern. Enter the Köprülü family. Köprülü Mehmed Pasha became Grand Vizier in 1656, and he made Mehmed an offer. Let me run everything. You just sign the papers. And go hunt. Do whatever you want. And Mehmed said yes. For the next several decades, the Köprülü family essentially ruled the Ottoman Empire. Father, then son, then another relative. A dynasty of grand viziers running things while the Sultan played in the woods. And you know what? They were good at it. The Köprülüs were competent administrators. They won wars. They stabilized the economy. They reformed the military. The empire actually did okay under their rule. But that just made it more obvious. The Sultan was irrelevant. Mehmed IV sat on the throne for 39 years. 39 years. One of the longest reigns in Ottoman history. And he barely mattered. But eventually, even the Köprülüs couldn't save him. In 1683, the Ottoman Empire launched its most ambitious campaign in decades, the Siege of Vienna. The goal? Conquer Vienna, break into Central Europe, expand the empire like the old days. It should have worked. The Ottoman army was massive, well-equipped, well-led. But they failed. Spectacularly. Not only did they fail to take Vienna, they were crushed. Routed. The combined forces of the Holy Roman Empire and Poland, destroyed the Ottoman army. It was a catastrophe, the worst military defeat in generations, and someone had to take the blame. The Janissaries, the same elite soldiers who'd supported Mehmed's rise to power decades earlier, turned on him. They demanded he abdicate, step down, leave. And Mehmed, the man who'd been sultan for nearly 4 decades, he had no support, no allies, no power base of his own, because he'd never built one. He'd been too busy hunting. On November 8th, 1687, Mehmed IV was deposed, removed from the throne, sent to live in the cafes, the golden cage where failed sultans and rival princes were imprisoned. After 39 years as sultan, he was nothing. Mehmed lived in the cafes for 6 more years, a prisoner in the same palace where he'd once been emperor. He died on January 6th, 1693. He was 51 years old. No grand funeral, no mourning empire, just the end. His brother, Suleiman II, became sultan. Then another brother, Ahmed II. Then Mehmed's own son, Mustafa II. The empire moved on, as if Mehmed had never really been there at all. So what do we make of Mehmed IV? Was he a failure? Absolutely. He wasted 39 years on the throne. He let others rule in his name. He prioritized hunting over governing. But was it his fault? He was 6 years old when they made him sultan. 6. He watched his father murdered. He watched his mother orchestrate Kosum Sultan's assassination. He grew up in a palace where everyone controlled him, manipulated him, used him. Is it any wonder he escaped into the forests? That he found peace in hunting instead of politics? Maybe Mehmed the Hunter wasn't weak. Maybe he was broken. Broken by a system that put a child on a throne and expected him to be a man. That surrounded him with schemers and power-hungry officials and expected him to lead. That gave him absolute power on paper, but no real control over anything. The Ottoman system created Mehmed IV, and then it destroyed him. Today, Mehmed IV is mostly remembered, if he's remembered at all, as the hunting sultan, the one who didn't care about his empire. But maybe that's not the whole story. Maybe Mehmed IV is also a warning about what happens when you put children in positions of power, when you prioritize bloodlines over competence, when you build a system where nobody can ever truly trust anyone. Mehmed ruled for 39 years, but he never had a chance to actually be sultan. And in the end, that failure, his failure, the system's failure, helped push the Ottoman Empire into its long, slow decline. After Mehmed, the empire would never be the same. The defeats would keep coming. The territory would keep shrinking. The glory days were over. All because a 6-year-old boy was given a crown, and nobody ever taught him what to do with it. If this story of a child robbed of his childhood, a man who never learned to lead, and an empire that failed its own sultan moved you, hit that like button. Because history isn't just about the great conquerors and brilliant leaders. It's also about the ones who were set up to fail. The ones who never had a chance. The ones the system broke before they could even try. And Mehmed IV's story is one of the saddest examples of that failure. We're uncovering all these untold stories, the tragedies, the broken rulers, the systems that destroyed the people they were supposed to elevate. So if you want more content that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about empires and power, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment. Was Mehmed IV a failure or a victim? Could he have done anything differently? What would you have done at age 6? Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to a child is give them everything, except the tools to handle it.